America entered World War II with obsolete biplanes and desperate hope. 4 years later, it fielded the most lethal air force ever built. 15,000 Mustangs, tens of thousands of Thunderbolts, fighters crowding airfields from England to the Pacific. But blueprints didn't win the air war. Mechanics welded armor on jungle strips, stripped paint for a few extra miles an hour, and hung fuel tanks no engineer approved. Pilots shoved engines past the red line, gambling metal just to make it home. These 15 American warplanes weren't just flown, they were reinvented in combat. Factory spec was only the starting point. The P-51 Mustang, Rolls-Royce Merlin, Phi 1000 650 engine, 1,490 horsepower. Top speed 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. 6 Browning .50 cowls with 400 rounds each. First combat in 1942. Over 15,000 built. With drop tanks, it could escort bombers to Berlin and back. Something no other Allied fighter could do. Not the Thunderbolt, not the Lightning. Nobody. Long-range bomber escort over Germany. That was the mission. The Mustang worked between 20,000 and 30,000 feet where the Merlin sang. Up there, it owned the sky. Later, P-51 groups hunted German airfields at ground level, strafing anything that moved. Trains, trucks, parked aircraft. The combination of range, speed, and 6 heavy machine guns made it the nightmare of the Luftwaffe by mid-1944. Now, here's what pilots actually did with it. First thing, radio mast behind the cockpit. Gone. 20 pounds saved, less drag. Some squadrons pulled 2 guns. More roll rate in a dogfight. Weight saved. Mechanics discovered the Merlin could run 75 inches of manifold pressure for short bursts. Factory rating was 61. This was forbidden. Pilots did it anyway. 2 minutes of godlike power. Then potential engine failure. But 2 minutes was enough to catch a fleeing 109. Canopy frames got painted flat black to kill glare. And experienced Mustang pilots learned one crucial rule. Never dogfight low. Use altitude. Dive on the enemy. Make one pass. Refuse the turning fight. The Messerschmitt 109 could outturn you at 5,000 feet. Let him try it at 28,000. The P-51 didn't just win air superiority, it ended it. By spring 1945, Luftwaffe pilots refused to take off. Not because they lacked courage, because flying against Mustangs at that point wasn't combat, it was suicide. That's the real victory, making the enemy quit the sky entirely. Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. 7 tons of angry American metal. Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp radial. 2,000 horsepower. Max speed 433 miles per hour at 30,000 feet. 8.50 caliber machine guns. Could haul 2,500 pounds of bombs or 10 rockets. First deliveries 1943. Over 15,600 produced. The most numerous American fighter. It earned another name in Europe. The Jug, as in Juggernaut. Early war? High-altitude bomber escort. That massive supercharged radial could breathe thin air at 40,000 feet. But the P-47 found its calling lower down. Ground attack, tank busting, train hunting. The Thunderbolt absorbed damage that would drop other fighters instantly. Radial engines don't have coolant to leak. They just keep running with cylinders blown off. Pilots brought home aircraft with 3-foot holes in wings. Field armorers installed extra rocket rails. 16 rockets instead of 10, officially prohibited, universally done. Some units pulled the armor plate behind the seat for better visibility. The P-47's dive speed was insane. Routinely exceeded 550 miles per hour in combat dives. Mechanics learned the R2800 could tolerate 70 inches manifold pressure for emergency climbs. Briefly. Very briefly. Most squadrons kept all 8 guns. Why? Because when you're strafing a German tank column, more is always better. But here's the twist nobody expected. The fighter designed for high-altitude combat became the war's deadliest ground attacker. Republic engineers built it to duel Focke-Wulfs at 35,000 feet. Instead, it spent 1944 and 1945 at treetop level, destroying more German tanks, trains and trucks than any other Allied aircraft. The perfect high-altitude fighter that found perfection at ground level. German soldiers didn't fear the Luftwaffe by 1945. They feared American Thunderbolts. Lockheed P-38. Lightning, America's only twin-engine fighter. 2 Allison 5, 1710 engines. 1,475 horsepower each. Top speed 414 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. 120mm cannon, 4.50 caliber machine guns, all in the nose. No convergence worries, point and shoot. Around 10,000 built starting 1941. The Pacific was lightning country. Twin-engine redundancy over endless ocean. One engine fails, keep flying. It worked between 15,000 and 28,000 feet effectively. Higher? The Allison suffocated without turbochargers. Photo reconnaissance, night fighter variants with radar, long-range bomber destroyer. In Europe it struggled. Cold weather murdered the Allison engines until late war fixes. But in the Pacific heat, it thrived. Pilots and mechanics got creative. Tropical units ripped out the intercooler doors. Better cooling, slight speed loss. Worth it. Ground crews fabricated bomb shackles under the center nacelle. One extra 1,000-pounder, not in the manual, worked perfectly. Nose cone painted flat black. Sun glare problem solved. Here's the trick nobody taught officially. Differential throttle in combat. Cut power to one engine momentarily during a turn. Tighten your radius. Germans never expected it. Mechanics adjusted propeller governors beyond factory specs. More climb rate. Higher risk of overspeed failure. Combat pilots accepted that trade instantly. The Lightning excelled where range and firepower mattered most. Its weakness was complexity. Maintenance intensive, required skilled mechanics. But master the P-38 and you had a weapon nothing could match at distance. Major Richard Bong scored 40 kills in one. America's top ace, not a coincidence. Grumman F6F Hellcat, designed for one purpose. Kill zeros. Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, 2,000 horsepower. Top speed 380 miles per hour at 17,300 feet, 6.50 caliber Brownings. Could carry 2,000 pounds of bombs or 6 rockets. First combat 1943. Grumman built 12,275. The Zero was faster, more maneuverable. Didn't matter. The Hellcat ate it alive. Carrier-based air superiority over the Pacific. That was the job. The F6F worked best between 10,000 and 25,000 feet. It could outdive any Japanese fighter. Outrun them, not outturn them. Didn't need to. Ground attack against Japanese positions and shipping. Secondary role. Primary role? Domination. Navy pilots achieved a kill ratio of 19:1 in Hellcats. 19:1. That's not combat. That's extermination. Carrier space limited modifications. But crews adapted. Some squadrons pulled guns for weight savings. Maintenance crews added armor plates around the oil cooler after 7.7mm rounds kept puncturing it. Pilots learned the Hellcat's secret. Dive speed. Zeros couldn't follow past 400 miles per hour. Their wings would tear off. So Hellcat pilots attacked from above. Always above, slash down, fire, dive away, never turn with them. Mechanics discovered an emergency trick. Advanced throttle beyond the stop. Extra 200 horsepower for 2 minutes. Then probable engine failure. But 2 minutes was enough when 6 zeros just bounced you. Here's what changed everything. The Hellcat arrived exactly when America needed to break Japanese naval aviation. Not earlier. Not later. June 1943. Right as Japan's experienced carrier pilots were dying off. The Hellcat faced increasingly green Japanese pilots while American training programs were producing combat-ready aviators in massive numbers. Perfect aircraft, perfect timing, perfect storm. The Zero never recovered from that collision. The Hellcat didn't just win the carrier war, it ended Japan's ability to fight one. Chance fought F4U Corsair, the fastest piston fighter of World War II. Period. Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. 2,250 horsepower in late models. Top speed exceeded 446 miles per hour at 26,000 feet. 6 50 caliber machine guns or 4 20mm cannons. Could haul 4,000 pounds of bombs. Over 12,500 built starting 1942. The Japanese called it Whistling Death. From the sound it made in a dive. That distinctive gull-wing howl, right before you died. Initially land-based. Carrier landing characteristics were lethal. That long nose blocked everything during approach. Marines used it for ground attack across Pacific islands. Devastating. Later variants fixed the carrier problems. Then the F4U became naval air superiority as well. It operated effectively from sea level to 35,000 feet. The engine and speed gave it unmatched climb rate. But visibility during landing, still terrible, killed more pilots in landing accidents than enemy fire early on. Field modifications made it even deadlier. Marine squadrons ripped out 3 inboard guns per wing, replaced them with single 20mm cannons, 4-cannon armament, absolutely devastating against ground targets. Ground crews fabricated heavy-duty bomb mounts for 1,000-pounders. Factory racks were too light. Some squadrons cut down the turtleback behind the cockpit, raised the seat, better visibility. Vought later adopted this officially. Pilots ran water injection continuously during combat. Manual said short bursts only. Reality? Continuous injection. Burned through the water tank in 5 minutes, but gave crucial power advantage. Worth it. Mechanics modified oil cooler doors to stay partially open. Early Corsairs overheated constantly. This fixed it, unofficially. The Corsair was brutal, against air targets, against ground targets. Its weaknesses were difficult handling for new pilots and maintenance complexity. But in experienced hands, nothing could touch it. Marine ace Pappy Boyington scored 28 kills in Corsairs before the Japanese captured him. The F4U kept fighting long after the war ended. Korea, even Vietnam. That's how good it was. Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, America's frontline fighter when war started. Allison Fee 1710 engine, 1,150 horsepower. Entered service 1939. Top speed 362 miles per hour at 15,000 feet. 6.50 caliber machine guns. Could carry 1,000 pounds of bombs. Approximately 13,700 built. Not the fastest, not the most maneuverable, not the best at anything, except surviving, and being there when nothing else was. The P-40 fought everywhere. North Africa, China, Pacific, Russia. It worked best below 15,000 feet, where the unsupercharged Allison had enough power. Flying Tigers used it against Zeros. Desert Air Force against Messerschmitts. Ground attack. Low-altitude interception. The P-40 could outdive almost anything, and it was built like a tank. At high altitude, hopeless. German and Japanese fighters murdered it above 20,000 feet. But low down, with smart tactics, it held its own. Modifications in the field were extensive. Desert Air Force mechanics removed air filters completely. More power. Engine wore out faster. In combat, who cares? Some units stripped all non-essential equipment. Radio gear. Over 200 pounds saved. Flying Tigers taped over half the radiator intake in cold weather. Faster warm-up, less drag. The key was tactics. Never dogfight Japanese fighters, ever. Dive attack. Break away at high speed. Repeat. Ground crews fabricated bomb racks for 6 100-pound bombs instead of 2 500-pounders. Better against spread targets. The P-40's rugged construction meant field repairs other aircraft couldn't attempt. Wing shot full of holes. Patch it. Keep flying. The P-40 bought time when America had nothing better. Its weakness was altitude performance. Above 15,000 feet it was meat. But it was tough, available in numbers, and held the line until Mustangs and Thunderbolts arrived. The Flying Tigers proved something crucial. Tactics matter more than performance specs. 10-to-1 kill ratio against zeros. In an inferior fighter. That's what smart flying looks like. Boeing B-17. Flying Fortress. America's icon of strategic bombing. 4 Wright R-1820 radials. 1,200 horsepower each. Definitive G model by 1943. Max speed 287 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. 13.50 caliber machine guns. Up to 8,000 pounds of bombs internally. Designed for high-altitude precision daylight bombing. Boeing built 12,731 of them. The British tried daylight bombing and got slaughtered. America insisted it would work. The B-17 would prove it, at terrible cost. Strategic bombing over Europe. Operating altitude 25,000 to 30,000 feet. Flying in tight box formations. Hundreds of fortresses striking deep into Germany. The heavy defensive armament was supposed to protect against fighters. Germans quickly learned. Attack head-on. Early models had weak frontal defense. The B-17 could absorb incredible damage, limping home on 2 engines, tail blown off, still flying, saving crews who should have been dead. But here's what crews actually did. Many bomb groups pulled the cheek guns, weight saved, drag reduced, 5 to 10 miles per hour faster, more valuable than extra firepower. Crews stripped paint completely, another 5 to 10 miles per hour. Some groups added extra armor under pilot seats. Ground fire was killing pilots. Armorers discovered they could load 12,000 pounds of bombs for short missions, remove ammunition from several gun positions. Weight trade. Some crews removed waist gun doors entirely. Better visibility, better firing angles. Brutal cold at 30,000 feet. They accepted it. Experienced pilots flew slightly out of formation during flak runs, harder for German predictors to track, but stayed close enough for mutual defense. The B-17 proved daylight precision bombing could work. But the butcher's bill was unspeakable. 4,750 B-17s lost in combat. 47,000 airmen killed or missing. That's more casualties than the entire Marine Corps suffered in the Pacific. The Fortress was tough enough to do the job, but no aircraft was tough enough to make it easy. Consolidated B-24 Liberator, the most produced American military aircraft of World War II. 4 Pratt & Whitney R-1830 radials, 1,200 horsepower each. First combat 1941. Top speed 290 miles per hour at 28,000 feet. 10 50 caliber machine guns, 8,000 pounds of bombs. That distinctive Davis wing. High aspect ratio, long range, over 18,400 manufactured. More than any other U.S. military aircraft ever. The B-17 got the glory. The B-24 did more work. Strategic bombing in Europe. Anti-submarine patrols over the Atlantic. It operated between 20,000 and 28,000 feet, lower than the Fortress. Less effective turbocharging, but longer range, higher cruise speed, less stable bombing platform, harder to fly in formation. Navy and British forces loved it for maritime patrol. That range was unmatched. The B-24 could stay airborne seemingly forever. Hunting U-boats across vast ocean expanses, field modifications addressed its quirks. European bomb groups removed the ball turret on lead aircraft, installed H-2X radar for blind bombing through clouds. Crews ripped out the nose turret on late models, put in a bombardier position with greenhouse glazing. Better visibility, better accuracy. Pacific units stripped all guns except tail turret. Long overwater flights. Weight saved for fuel. Mechanics learned the temperamental R1830 engines wanted slightly rich mixture during climb. Manual was wrong. Field experience proved it. Some groups installed auxiliary fuel tanks in the bomb bay. Maximum range missions. Extremely dangerous if hit, but sometimes range mattered more than safety. The Liberator never captured hearts, but it won the war. While B-17s got newsreel coverage, B-24s sank U-boats in the Atlantic Gap, closed the last hunting ground where submarines could surface safely. No glory, just results. By 1944, German U-boat crews called the Mid-Atlantic the Death Zone, because Liberators were everywhere. Relentless, unglamorous, unstoppable. North American B-25 Mitchell. America's most versatile medium bomber. 2 Wright R2600 radials, 1,700 horsepower each. In service 1941. Top speed 272 miles per hour at 13,000 feet. Armament varied wildly, from defensive guns only to 18 forward-firing .50 cals in the G gunship model. Carried 3,000 pounds of bombs internally, approximately 9,800 built. Jimmy Doolittle launched 16 of them from a carrier deck, bombed Tokyo, April 1942. America needed that psychological victory desperately. The Mitchell delivered, every theater, multiple roles. In the Pacific, it was the low-level skip bomber, devastating Japanese shipping, strafing airfields. In Europe, medium-altitude tactical bombing. The Mitchell operated best between 10,000 and 15,000 feet for bombing, or at wave-top height for anti-shipping strikes. It was rugged, forgiving to fly. Pilots loved it, absolutely loved it. You could fly a B-25 on one engine, with half a wing missing, and still land it. Field modifications transformed it into a monster. Pacific squadrons added forward .50 cals in the nose, sometimes 16 total guns. Before the factory G model standardized it, some units mounted 75mm cannon in the nose, anti-shipping work, field modification. Later adopted officially. Crews pulled the ventral turret, useless in combat, just drag and weight. Mechanics ran the R2600 engines extremely rich during low-level attacks, cooled them, prevented detonation, consumed fuel at terrifying rates. But you survived the attack run. Squadrons developed skip bombing. Delayed fuse bombs bounced into ship hulls, entirely field-developed, never taught at flight school, learned in combat. But here's the devastating irony. Doolittle's raid hit Tokyo with 16 B-25s carrying 500-pound bombs. Symbolic victory, minimal damage. 3 years later, modified B-25 strafer variants were sinking entire Japanese convoys in single attacks. 1 squadron, 1 mission, 10 cargo ships destroyed. The aircraft designed for medium-altitude bombing became the Pacific's most lethal ship killer. Not through engineering, through field improvisation. Japanese merchant marine losses to B-25 skip bombers exceeded losses to submarines in some theaters. The propaganda raid became a weapon of mass destruction. Bell P-39 Airacobra, one of the strangest American fighters. Allison Fiv, 1710 engine, 1,150 horsepower. But here's the weird part. Engine mounted behind the pilot, driving the propeller through a shaft under the cockpit. First deliveries 1941. Top speed 380 miles per hour at 15,000 feet. Armed with 137mm cannon firing through the propeller hub. 4.30 caliber machine guns. 2.50 caliber guns in pods. Around 9,500 built. The US Army didn't want them. Soviet Union took 4,700 and absolutely loved them. American forces used it for ground attack and low-altitude work. The Airacobra worked below 12,000 feet. Above that, the engine choked. No supercharger worth mentioning. But that 37mm cannon was devastating against ground targets. Trucks, light tanks, Bunkers. One hit. Spectacular explosion. Soviet pilots used it differently. Low-altitude dogfighting on the Eastern Front. Germans flew low there. The P-39's heavy nose armament made it lethal. Soviet ace Alexander Pukrishkin scored 59 kills in Airacobras. Russia's second highest ace. American units made minimal modifications. The design was too unusual. But Soviets got creative. They removed wing guns entirely. Too small caliber. Saved weight. Better performance. Mechanics adjusted the propeller reduction gear for better acceleration. Not in any manual. Field discovery. Some Soviet units removed heavy radio equipment. Saved 200 pounds. The cannon jammed constantly. Soviet armorers developed field fixes. American crews never figured out. Pilots learned the Airacobra's center of gravity was sensitive. Wrong fuel load, it could tumble in a spin, unrecoverable. But masters of the type exploited it. Used that instability for snap rolls and quick reversals Germans couldn't follow. Here's the final irony. America's most hated fighter became the Soviet Union's third most produced Lend-Lease aircraft. US pilots called it a death trap. Soviet pilots called it Kobrushka. Little Cobra. Term of endearment, same aircraft, different war, different enemy, completely different legend. Sometimes the worst fighter in one air force is the perfect fighter in another.